Hey, hi everybody. Thank you so much for that introduction. Do you want me to speak into this?
No,
Okay, good. That's great. And thank you for having me, and thank you to all the artists that I got to talk to today. It was really such a pleasure to get to know your work. Yeah, so I have been thinking about this talk and what I wanted to share and kind of explore with you. It's an interesting time to have this like presentation. I feel like at this moment I'm kind of breaking open the body of my paintings, like the physical form. I'm really wanting to change it. I feel like I've been kind of in this mode for, like Paint the Air was like making these huge paintings where I did really sew all these different densities of silk together, and I kind of worked that way for a while, and that feels really comfortable and beautiful and fun for me. But I feel like I'm opening it up. So what I kind of wanted to share with you is these studio shots. These aren't finished paintings. This is just um I don't know, kind of like ugly exploration, like not really not feeling like I'm trying to knowing that I'm going to fail at this point where it's not going to be clear, it's not going to be concise, um it's going to be a journey to get to the next place. And I really love that journey. And I love the studio. I love the studio. Like these are not finished paintings. These are things are even pinned together. And I have no idea what they're going to look like, but I love this place of possibility. Yeah, especially like the studio wall is like to me is heaven. Like having this pile of stuff, and then you just kind of relax and you see all of these beautiful combinations start to happen. And this is kind of where a lot of the paintings come from just placing and changing. And some days all I do is move stuff around, which is physical. It's laborious, sometimes climbing on ladders, sometimes just, pinning things up. But that process is really a huge part of my work. And so is painting from nature. It's actually why I moved to Maine. I moved to Maine 4.5 years ago to paint from the landscape and become totally familiar and enchanted and also surprised and always kind of confounded by this space of nature. Um, yeah. So what I would like to do is kind of take you back to like a long time ago we'll go back to 2004. This is like maybe 3 days ago, and then we'll just jump to 2004. Because so as I'm breaking open this body of the painting, which is how I feel about what's happening in the studio right now, I'm like, wow, I'm really just going right back to the beginning again. These standing paintings, these transparent paintings, the light coming through, the pattern, which, at this point, I kind of think it's a little silly. Like, I think these are sort of silly paintings, and the way I was cutting them to make the pattern was silly, and layering them. But I'm so interested in that, like, kind of, that these are sort of, like very early paintings and sort of failures. But I love that, like, I was interested in like a similar kind of this theme, like of layering, of what's underneath, of having the painting stand. Like that's been there for so long. And I just feel like such an interest in that, in these returned interests and obsessions and how they mature over time, how your life matures and then your work matures. And it's just really, I don't know, I'm really fascinated in that right now. Um, I was talking to Robert, the director at CMCA. He was asking me because the works were standing in that show, and he's like, "Have you ever worked this way before?" And I was like, "Yeah," but I don't know. The difference is sort of almost like, kind of like appalling or something to like see these rickety, crazy structures that I built in 2004, and then like the really pristine, like steel, beautiful structures that they, helped me build for that show. But I just think it's really interesting the way we can return to the same topics. The transparency has always been a huge, big deal for me, partly because this was my studio in Brooklyn. It's just this light flooded space with all these pillars. So I was always experimenting with turning the painting so the light would come through it or the light would hit it, like which would be more interesting for each painting. here, again, like the cutting, trying, yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought about this work in a long time. And then these are the ones that I started thinking about when I made the new works. I was like, what about these paintings? Like, I don't know. I feel like all of the paintings, as I already said, they're not like, they are sort of failures, like materialistically and in many ways, but there's something in them that I wanted to think about in the new work that I'm making. The way they're kind of grabbing and holding the pieces are grabbing and holding on to each other, and they're stretched and they're delicate, and there's some, delicate stitching in this one. And this one has like these L shapes that were kind of interesting. And these are paintings I've never shown that just kind of, they don't really live in this world really, except for that they kind of came up for me again in this new work. And yeah, this return, this one was kind of like an American flag that was just like tattered and pulled. And this one the little stick at the top is holding it out, so it's actually bowed out. So I was starting to think about three-dimensional form there. And this one is sort of the ugliest of the group, but this is really the one that I was like, I have to find this painting. I'm like digging through the hard drive. Like, where is that weird painting that's, I don't know, there's something in it for me still. And also like the messy wall, like I don't know, just thinking about how things change over time. Like now, if I took a picture, I'd probably put on a nicer part of the wall, but um, yeah. And then the work changed over time. Like this is kind of a post, I went to Bard for grad school, also a low residence program. And this is kind of a in the middle of Bard program, really then pushing the three-dimensionality and then working out into space. Going through these images, it was interesting because this is an installation I did at Bowie Gallery in Kittery, Maine, that friends of mine run. And it's fascinating to me. I never thought about this before, but this piece and then the next show I did there 2 years later marked a complete opening in my work to a whole new way of working. So I made this piece which had like the holes in that I cut in the fabric became structures for these like kind of like globes of transparency to like fall through that I stiffened with rabbit skin glue. And um, they made these like forms that were protruding, and the light's coming through in one direction, and then the inside is, that's what it looks like with the sunlight on it. It's just kind of interesting how much more exciting it is when the light is coming from behind with these. And then this one's like a smaller version, but this became kind of a way that I ended up working for, I don't know how long, maybe a year or so, making these like bulbous forms, having paintings stand. Like this one was like like touched. Um, this is a piece that was in the Queen's Museum, this show that Jamila James curated that was really wonderful. And just sits on the floor. So at this time I was painting on, this one doesn't actually have it has no paint pretty much. But I was painting on used bed sheets. And so I was incorporating these found kind of poignant fabrics, like these patterns that would recall something strong in me. So I was starting to work with those, or I had been working with sheets for a long time. I worked with sheets for a very long time. This picture, I don't know, the feeling of the studio at this time was really exciting, like things popping out of the wall, like things held together in a very thin and precarious way. I feel like the spirit of the studio was very playful and jubilant. So these are about 2010. So we've changed a little bit. Things have changed. Um, this was kind of one of my favorites from this series. And again, like this emphasis on transparency, light, being submerged in light, having access to light from behind a piece. These are themes that I'm really interested in right now. So it's been kind of fun for me to kind of revisit old work. This is a piece that uh, well, you'll see in the next slide, but this piece and the one before I ended up getting to show at Canada Gallery in 2010. Um, yeah, I guess I was curious about these two works because of the rickety nature of their standing mechanisms. And that quality of like the handmade and easily broken. Uh, yeah, it's kind of a nice feeling. So then in 2012, I did another residency installation at Bowie Gallery. And at that time, I had come back recently from a trip to India and I started working with bleach on bed sheets and like bleaching patterns into the sheets and kind of like starting to explore Islamic patterns that I learned from my teacher in India. So I was getting into this sort of like, it looks like batik, but it's bleach. And you can see that a little bit in just this really simple honeycomb pattern in the lower left. But when I went up to Maine to do this residency, I was really just using that technique, but painting the scenes around me. And this was kind of like an important time in my life because I sort of realized I wanted to live in Maine then and really loved exploring that area. And here you can see this is like the backlit and then like more of like the front lit image. Yeah, but these are kind of like the basis of my work, these paintings, and it's interesting for me to see them now because they are so they empty in a lot of ways, and there's so much that isn't like captured with color or pattern. Um, but it really does feel like the basis of something for me that maybe that's, maybe that's only interesting to me, but I do think it's interesting, like this sort of like how we keep these things plant this seed and then they grow. And for some reason I felt more interested in sharing with you all like these old works instead of like newer works. I ended up showing some of these in this gallery called The Hole in New York. I think this was 2014. But Kathy Grayson put together this show, and yeah, it was kind of it was interesting working with her because she sort of took this curatorial role of like wanting to hang these works with like these like more normal paintings, these like stretched works. And I liked that, even though they were done at different times and in different places, she brought them together. And I really do like working with curators and kind of having their vision impact me. These are a little out of order, actually. These are younger than the last one. These are kind of my first bleach paintings. Um, you can see they're like punctured in ways like I'm cutting through the muslin. It's not canvas. And then using like this really transparent material. Um, so yeah, that's always been this impulse as well, to sort of like break through the surface. Like I think when I think about canvas, I really do love oil on canvas, but it's very thick and it's heavy and it's rigid. And I feel like I have to open up a hole in that space. I think my work is about opening up a hole in that rigidity, which then makes for very vulnerable work. Working with silk, it's not doesn't have the longevity. This is a painting from that time, a really like one of the first ones from that time. Again, like punching a hole through the surface of the painting and making a window. This is called Yellow Window. Yeah, and this is another from that series. Um, I guess these are like maybe 2012 or so. I wanted to look at more studio images. I just feel like this is where everything is. I feel like this is more of where it is than in finished work. Like this kind of the juiciness of your mind at play, of the looseness of the fabric, the layering, the spilling on the floor, my kid's toys. He was, in my studio a lot during that time. Um, yeah, I feel like this is sort of like the most special part is your time in the studio, what the work looks like on its way to becoming something that can be moved out of the studio. I mean, I think that's like a concern, you want to make something you can keep or that can be kept or that can be moved. But this can't be, and I kind of think it's better. Um, and I even think if you were to hang this in a gallery, I don't think it would be as good. Like there's just something so magical about your natural rhythm and the way you hang things in this unself-conscious manner. And to me that's better. So this work evolved, and this is related to that buoy work of like the bleached image submerged in like a more transparent ground, but grown up a little bit. Um, I'm gonna kind of skip that whole body of work that's related to this. But there were years of this work that I felt was like important to me. But I'm gonna skip all that. Um, this is the beginning of my silk painting adventure. So I was using bleach for many years, I think maybe 7 years. It's a highly toxic substance. I would get shaky after using it. I wore a full respirator, covered my eyes and everything, and I would be like shaking and my teeth would be clenching. So I knew I had to stop, but I wasn't sure how. And then I became, or like what I wanted to do with my work. And then I became pregnant and I was like, okay, now I have to stop. So that was good. It was nice. But I had a residency planned in Cassis, France, and I was like, whoa, like how am I going to deal with this? So I had gone to this fabric workshop and met the owner of Jacquard. I don't know if you know Jacquard Products in California. It's an amazing dye company. And I called the owner, Asher, and I was like, can you help me figure out silk dye like really fast? And he did. He like totally coached me through. So I really owe a lot to him. So I took this material to France with me and I just painted the landscape. I'd been painting the landscape with the bleach, but because it kind of made it a monochrome, like it just, not exactly a monochrome, like there's different colors inside as the bleach activates to different strengths. But it is basically a monochrome. It kind of like lent itself to painting nature and even still life in a way that felt more contemporary to me, like not using full palette. Like it felt like, okay, like I'm not really painting nature or I'm not really painting a still life. Like anything can look kind of, I don't know, it just looked kind of cool to me. Like I really loved the monochrome palette and also the found palette because the colors that would come out through the bleach I found really interesting. And then suddenly I'm working with full palette again. It feels extremely conservative in a way. And I remember even my gallerist from Ceysson and Benetier, which is a support surface gallery. It's about, abstraction and the surface and the support being what the work is about. And he was like, oh, these are so traditional, Lauren. And I was like, oh man, you don't get it. So I felt it was a hard transition. Going back to full spectrum color and representational, but I was like, I'm gonna stick with this. And it was okay. Like what I was interested in was like the lower left. I painted this bush a lot. And I was like, I want to make it specific to this bush, but I also want to make it pattern. And then the other thing that was really interesting was painting the sunset because it happened so fast. It was like seconds would go by and the water would change so fast. And that was thrilling. It was like, okay, like I get to have my true like abstract expressionist moment of like full saturation, like I loved it. Those were my two best moments. And then like the early work with these, again, keeping it super simple, like keeping the silk image centered in one color or two colors, popping it out of the wall with these sticks in this case. Um, and this is one of those sunset pieces. Oh, actually, this piece, I'm not using silk in the background. It's like a transparent nylon, so it's very clear. Um, but then I moved to all silk. Yeah, so then this work is 2009, or this show is 2019. So the works, it had, I guess that's like three years to kind of develop. And at this time, I was really thinking about the body of the painting in this set of paintings and wanting each one to have its own solution, making these, brass hangers for things with a friend of mine who helped me fabricate them, like building weird frames, like really trying to be open to, what the shape the forms were naturally taking and just keeping it open. Because I had felt, I think, with the previous body of work that I got into a set of constraints that were constraining me. I was like, these are my three materials, the bleach, the bed sheets, the transparent material, the frame showing through. And I started feeling like I don't know, I felt a little stuck. So in this body of work, I was like really breaking it open in certain ways, although the images I'm showing are pretty reductive. But still keeping the collage super simple, I guess. Um, oh, this is the piece I was talking about with the pattern, that bush from Cassis. Um, yeah, I had this really nice studio visit with Robert Kushner, and he saw like the hanging loose work and he saw this stretched work, and he said something that really made a big impact on me. And he was saying, I love it stretched because then you really see like the paint strokes and you see it as a painting more. Like you don't, it's not like a thing as much, which I really hold that. I really feel like when it's hanging, you're like, oh, look at this thing. There's a novelty aspect maybe, or maybe just the fact that the silk is flowing, you pay attention to the material of it more, and you're considering it like as an object in space. Um, so after this body of work, I did return to really stretching everything and having one continuous piece of fabric and just wanting to focus on the image. But that's not where we are right now. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I think I was really trying in this work to get some of that energy of like the studio revelations, the play of it, like the activity of how things are in motion. I was really trying to harness that. The studio wall, I was trying to bring that into the work and find ways to build frames that could have as much life in the work as possible and also be fairly simple, what I could build myself with wood usually. Um, so this is kind of what I was exploring during that time. Yeah, bringing it back to the theme for me, which is why I'm showing you these particular images, is like interrogating the body of the painting. Like, what can this thing do? Does it have to be a rectangle? Does it have to be stretched? How far can I take it on my own, with my tools, and how far can it go and can you still see the painting? Can you still see the image? Or at what point does it become too distracting? Um, yeah, I made a bunch of these like triangle paintings, and at this point I was really playing with like layering the dye, kind of going back in and in and painting it more like an oil painting, and that felt really, really nice, kind of like a satisfying way to work. Um, I think this is one of my favorites from this. I think it might be maybe my favorite from this body of work because it's so moody and I don't know, I've never shown this painting. It just feels really special to me. Like just like it's big. These are big paintings. Like, I don't know, like 7 feet tall or 8 feet tall. It's really big. And that middle section is very transparent. And if you lift it, there's like another painting underneath, which so you can't really see that it's two, but if you lift it, then you can see, wow, like it really, the second image does really impact the first image and kind of gives it this depth of color. And I dyed them for each other. So that was, at this point, I was really pushing, what can I do with silk? I was tub dyeing, which is like submerging it into boiling dye with vinegar and then painting and doing my normal stretching, painting and steaming, trying to sew these new shapes. Like I was really like, okay, like how far can I go with the silk? And that's something that's kind of interesting to me again. Now I'm kind of wondering like, should I bring back some of this tub dyeing? Should I bring back some of this looseness? I went to Provincetown. Yeah, I went to Provincetown a lot to paint during these years because I was living in New York City during this time and really wanting to paint from nature all the time, but only getting to go for like, I don't know, a couple weeks every year, and then painting in the graveyards, painting in my garden. So there was a real longing for nature during this time. Um, this is kind of another experimental piece with like, I don't know, if you start working with silk, like the layering potential is so amazing, but I still haven't really harnessed that yet. I was trying during this time. Um, So then, okay, so this is another big shift. This is right before I moved to Maine. I started making these singular panels of silk. Um, this is habitat. So it's like it's not transparent. The middle sections are not transparent. And I was like, oh, I'm painting again. I really felt like I was getting out of sculpture, getting out of the body and getting into painting and imagery and even color in a way that felt like older and new at the same time. And I remember being really excited, being like, I am making paintings. Like it felt really good. It's the only one I have from that series. And then I moved to Maine and started painting stripes and squares, which was not, and this is a really big painting. This is, I don't know, I think it might be 9 feet tall. So it's like really, really, really big painting. So you kind of get engulfed by it. Um, so I moved to Maine to paint the landscape, and for the first year or more, I just painted, or maybe 3, I painted lots of stripes and grids, and I was really surprised by that. But I don't know, that's just what happened. And so these are also like, this is 2 pieces of silk sewn together with a border sewn on as well, but these are what I think of as singular. They're not, there's no transparency in them. There's no different types of silk. It's like, this is one image, and that was, and it's stretched. There's a frame. We're like making paintings now. This was like my return to painting after like years of kind of loose stuff. So it felt really nice, actually. It felt a little bit like, am I selling out? I don't know, but it was really fun. And I went to a residency upstate New York actually and I painted this one there. And that's kind of all I'm showing of this body of work, which is, I feel like a really significant body of work to me, but I don't know. I didn't feel like sharing them for some reason. I don't know. I feel like they're more familiar to me, but probably not to everybody. But I wanted to go back. So that's why we started way in the beginning. But in these paintings and in the stripe paintings as well, and the other grid paintings, I'm really like dissecting the colors I see in nature. And I'm just having, this wonderful moment of just distilling what I'm seeing into a few tones and just kind of, I mean, this is a very direct landscape painting of, this beautiful field in the residency, this line of trees, the bushes, um, the wood pile, which is abstracted, and the lilacs. Yeah, I don't know. It was a really nice way for me to experience nature and not get so overwhelmed, just to break it down and keep it really simple. And I don't know, it felt like a really strange way for me to paint, since as you saw before, everything was very loose and kind of organic. So for me to start painting grids was not what I expected. Um, So the next slide I have begins like much more recent work. So it's a big transition. So I was kind of going from this more like tight gridded work. Um, and then for the show at CMCA, I think I wanted to break it open again. I was like, you kind of like, with the potential of silk to keep it looking so much like a normal painting felt a little bit untrue or something. So I started to like sew all these different materials together that would have these areas going back to those paintings of the open space and the windows and the holes. So that was kind of my goal with this work for CMCA. And it's a little hard to tell in the photographs, but you can see some areas that are really, really transparent. And then in some areas I'm using like that nubby silk, so it's thick. It looks kind of like canvas. And then the color sits really differently, like on all these different types of silk. So it'll kind of like, some parts will sort of disappear, and then it's kind of nice. These photographs don't show it, but these 2 paintings were layered in a way so that you could see one through the other. And that was thrilling for me because it's something that I was exploring, 20 21 years ago in that space that I rented, that crazy space, like in the basement of, the ground floor of this building. It was just it was a really exciting experience for me to work with this, institution that provided support so I could make those beautiful stands and have this like elegant presentation of standing work at such a different level. So that was really such a privilege. Yeah, and so, it was interesting. People were very curious about seeing the backs of the paintings, um, which is, a result of having them in the middle of the room. Yeah, I think there's a vulnerability in that, like seeing like your hand and your work and your touch, and not just the front, not the forward facing self, but like the recessive or the hidden self being part of the show was nice. I liked that. And in these paintings, my son posed for me. I don't know if you can see they're all his silhouette in different postures. So it was really wonderful to make these paintings and paint our landscape around our house and studio. These poppies were growing in the garden that were like so amazing, and my son, and like painting his image and contemplating his little body and his, the different um, expressions and personalities that came through his postures. I also started, this was actually a strange evolution of how I got to those big paintings. Like I didn't know really how to scale up. That was like a challenge for me. So what I first did for some weird reason is I made all these narrow stretcher bars. I don't know why I did this, but I thought I would like make all these small paintings and kind of like cobble them together. And that really didn't work at all. Like it didn't work. Like they were all their own thing. So, but that was fun because then I had all these like tall, strange little paintings everywhere, and I started to really love that form. So alongside making these huge frames, um, or huge paintings, I started making these like really tall ones. It's like 10 feet tall and 10 feet wide. I was working with 10 feet. And what I did end up doing to build the bigger paintings was I built like a set of 3 stretcher bars that are 10 feet tall they were like 34 or 40 something. They were all a little different. So all the big paintings started as 3 tall paintings, both painted, painted side by side and also painted sometimes separately. Um, this is one painting, but has the 2 parts. Um, yeah, and so, I really broke out of the grid, as you can see in this work, and I was really trying to like let all of my languages coalesce. And I think that's what I'm really trying to do. I think I'm trying to paint in this way where you're just painting, and it's like you've built up this kind of vocabulary in your body and it just comes out. Like the different modes come out, and they tell a story, like they tell of these different times. And what was interesting for me was sort of for this painting, I kind of dug back into my box of paintings from like the past few years and actually used parts of older stripe paintings and pattern paintings. And it was just, for me, it was really interesting to see these color combinations I was working with that I wouldn't think of doing now. And it was kind of like this wonderful, like, rediscovery of like my brain from a different time period that was processing. It was like a diary or something, these color patterns that I was creating. And um, one thing that was kind of interesting too is that since most of the patterns are a reflection of the landscape around me, if I made them, let's say in 2022, and then I make another one in 2025, but they're looking at the same source. Um, like the color relationships between those are really interesting. So I was kind of having fun with time in that way. Yeah, the blue one. It's the blue one. and sort of like noticing when the white space is nice. I have kind of an issue with the use of white in paintings. I usually like, I don't really like leaving white canvas or silk, um, or using too much of the color white at all. But in this one, I kind of let it have these like breathing spaces of raw silk. And also in the poppy one too, in this one. Um, just have a couple more left. I did continue that format in both directions, the horizontals and the big ones. After CMCA, this was a piece I made for Nada Miami with Soco Gallery. Uh, I made this one really long one, a 10-foot one, and it was for the booth, like, that we had the dimensions, and then they're like, oh, well, our booth got changed. The wall is only 8 feet wide now. And I was like, oh no. But it was kind of a miracle. I was like, all right, I'm gonna make a new one. And I was kind of on a roll. And I feel like that's something really exciting about painting is when it's coming out, like you can kind of make a lot. And I felt like that was kind of this really lucky moment because I did have the energy and the kind of, I don't know, because sometimes that goes away. You don't have that all the time. So that was really fun. I made this one and another one for the booth. And this was the big painting in the booth. I was talking about this today of being like, like making this like enormous painting that maybe is not very viable in the commercial world, but it's your heart and soul and how important that is to make that work that is maybe not as, commercially accessible, but that's everything you want it to be in some way. Not holding back. Um, yeah, this painting I was happy with because I felt like it kind of captured the spirit of like this book that I liked in my childhood, and also kind of like 70s bed sheets. Like I was like, oh yeah, like it just made me feel really happy. Um, And then for the booth, I also made like very small paintings, like this is, this big. So keep it practical. These are paintings. This is a painting from Addison, Maine that I made with a little residency with friends. Really special painting with friends outside, which is something kind of new for me, but I've been really loving that. Um, um, this isn't from there, but this is on really transparent silk, and that middle part is much less vibrant in person. It's very pale, and these are small paintings. Oh boy, I gotta speed it up. Here's some more small paintings. Uh, love of nature, painting outside. Um, and then kind of like, again, like I made those paintings, I made more like it, like the big ones and the long ones. And it's like, okay, let's open this up again. Let's change something. Let's break things open. So this one was on a frame and then it couldn't be framed, like it had to be hung. So then I added like the second border and that was like kind of fun. Like I wouldn't have finished it that way. Um, and so this is kind of where I'm more recently at, like, I don't know, like this is a series of paintings I just made for this small show in Blue Hill, Maine. And I was kind of tired. I had finished work for another show and I kind of wanted to keep it easy. And so I just found these landscape paintings from my bin, that I hadn't used yet, and straight lines, like so different. Like I'd been sewing all of these curves for the last few years, and this was sort of simplifying things in a way. Um, and again, submerging them in light and wanting that to be a part of them and layering them. Um, yeah. But I think in the end, I don't like sewing straight lines. Yeah, it's really boring. These were so hard to make. Like it physically and technically it's way easier than curves, but I was like, oh, I had so many straight lines to sew and I prefer my lines to be curved. Um, the last few I'm going to share with you are this is the 10-footer that didn't make it into the booth. And it went to a show. I'm in a group show in Luxembourg right now, and that's what these last few paintings are. Um, yeah, and so this was kind of like the big push this last, I don't know, few months before I made the straight line ones that felt like a rest. Um, yeah, in this one I was really trying to keep, I realized I want my landscape paintings to be fast and easy. And I know that sounds kind of like not that nice, but for me, it's very nice. Like I want it to be pleasurable. I want it to be about the experience of color. I don't want it to be tedious. I want it to be just really, I want there to be freedom. Like I really want I want it to be liberating. I don't want it to be confining. So I felt, you know, I enjoyed painting these two landscapes in this one. And these are a couple of the installation shots, the small work. This is an older painting, actually on the left. These are the small ones, the little guys. With huge borders. That was kind of a new thing, like really trying to keep the borders full size and part of the painting. Okay, that's it. Um, Hi.
I saw your work out of Miami this year.
Oh, no way. That's so
Yeah.
cool. That's cool.
You,
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I stood up at your-
Oh.
Your gallerist, like, are you back again?
Oh, that's so
How's that
nice.
going?
Yay. Oh, cool. That's, yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't make that connection before. That's I really love standing in front of it. I love that you touched.
Thank you.
My question is, I know you work from Thrive, an artist mother.
Oh, okay.
Caitlin.
Yeah.
If you would further.
Yeah.
And your earlier work, I wanted to talk about your fabrics and about the treasure hunt. Of
Yeah.
finding fabrics.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, those were fun days. Yeah, at first when I was using like found patterns, that was especially fun because I would go to Salvation Army and just kind of like, I started actually with my parents' bed sheets that are sheets, you know, the trucks and the, you know, just like the stuff around the house that I was allowed to take. Yeah, that was really fun. But then I stopped using prints after I went to India. I was like really interested in like when you do block printing, like the dye just becomes part of the fabric. And then I wasn't really interested in painting on fabric anymore. I wanted it to be permeating. So then I started using the bleach into solid sheets. So that was a big shift. Um, Eventually I took a little dropper of bleach with me because you don't know if the sheet's gonna fade or not. It was terrible, but I'd test a tiny little corner of the Salvation Army sheet, and if it was affected by the bleach, then I would buy it. But that's my terrible secret about my treasure hunts, but yeah. Okay.
I'm curious about the term paintings instead of like a fiber collage or a combine, something like that.
Yeah.
Cause I mean, I understand the, painting with like color, texture and transparency. I'm wondering about, how you decided to do that and how your gallery, describes your work. Like,
Yeah, that's such a good question. I have, you know, I'm a painter. I don't know. I come from a painting background. I even used oil paint before. I never really used canvas, though, I have to say. In college, a little bit, but not really. I started painting on bed sheets really soon. But I think, yeah, I just have, I feel like I do feel like in my soul that I'm a painter and like what you use, like what medium or material doesn't really matter. You know, it could be like dirt even, and it would be to me a paint. I don't know.
like gallery, like, will say paintings as well, though?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, a lot of, the couple galleries that I work with, they've been working with me since way before like silk and when I was actually using paint. So it's just kind of like part of my like trajectory through that. Yeah, that the medium has changed, but the movement's the same. Yeah, in a way. Yeah, yeah.
So, like a couple of words kept coming up for me, sort of this idea of fracture, and also care, because it's not really kind of repair or reconstruct, it's uh, something, it's a relationship, and I thought this was, a little bit reflexive of, painting itself being kind of, a question of territory. So I wanted to ask you, first, if any of these things resonate with you, and secondly, who do you see as your influences?
Okay, that seems like a big one. I definitely feel like there's like, especially in those early ones, like fracturing and repair was a huge part of it. Like I would literally cut big chunks out and then kind of like heal them with like transparency. So you could see that there was a cut, but it was like solid still. Was I thinking about with that? I was writing a little bit about this. I was thinking about, no, there's something about despair in that early work with the rips and the tears and the fragmentation.
That's why I was saying, like, to me, it didn't read like repair, it read like care.
Like care,
So it's like nursing,
like by putting it back together is like
In
a,
some ways,
yeah,
doesn't feel like, doesn't feel, it's like, somebody has an accident and then they are the way that they are, like things. So it's sort of like, it's a way of putting together, but not really repairing, not.
Oh, I
not
see what
making
you're
it
saying.
whole.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really nice. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, with the new ones with kind of these like bands going across, there's like a slit down the middle and I'm not putting it back together. I'm just leaving it open. Yeah, that's something nice to think about. Um, and then in terms of like, I really love Alan Shields. I feel like he's one of my heroes. Yeah. Uh, yeah. And Helen Frankenthal. Yeah.
Question, at some point you mentioned that, the silk might not last forever.
Yeah, I don't,
So what's
yeah,
the artwork that may not last forever?
I
that
know.
wait, what's your opinion on
I
it?
know. It's so intense. I don't know. I mean, I think about like Amy Sillman, like her works they're gonna last forever. Like I'm sure she does the best possible job priming them and they're, heavy. The oil paint is gonna resist anything that could possibly want to attack it. It's like, wow, like and she was one of my teachers at Bard. So that's kind of like, it's like there's that. Um, I don't know. I don't really know how long they'll last. And I don't know, how other people will feel about that.
Do you want to, or do you want them to maybe disappear?
I would like them to last long. I mean, I do feel though that I have a lot of like serious questions about our world and how long our world will last. And I feel like nature and people are very fragile. And I feel like these paintings are very fragile. So to me, it makes sense. Like, I don't really want to make a painting that's like mighty and tough and big and strong. I don't know. That doesn't feel right to me at this time. Yeah. 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 Okay.
Did I, right, said that you can see.
I did in Brooklyn. Yeah. Cause we had no, it painted cemeteries. We had like no like green space. So there was actually a really beautiful cemetery by our place in Brooklyn that it was in it's like kind of like Bed-Stuy, East New York. So it's called the Evergreens. But it had amazing trees, like really beautiful, like each tree had a lot of space. So I would just go there like under the trees and paint trees. Well, those paintings were all trees. and specific trees that were easy there. And then if I painted in the garden, it would be like flowers, you know. There was a man, Mr. Paul, who grew these amazing flowers. So I'd paint his flowers or I'd paint the tree. You know, it was like there wasn't, it was kind of slim pickings. You know, it's like whatever I could come across and be outside and paint in Brooklyn, that's what I did. Yeah. Yeah.
I was really interested when you mentioned that you moved to the country instead of painting street signs.
No.
But I think sometimes when you're in the country, it really can be so beautiful. It takes you a while to figure out how you extend that or make it better or different,
Yeah.
rather than just kind of enjoy it. So it's kind of, I have a question.
Yeah.
Obviously you mentioned transparency, and I think about stained glass when I look
Oh,
at these
yeah.
lot, and I think about screens and
Mhm.
pixels, and some of them look like pixels.
Yeah.
I wonder what beyond fabric, what sort of, where transparency visually manifests in your interest, what other stuff you look at.
I do love stained glass. I love glass in general. I think it's just so beautiful. I know a lot of artists have been making fused glass, which is really beautiful too. Um, I think the other place that transparency is interesting to me is in nature. Just even just looking at the water and looking at the sky and trying to decipher the color, like you just see these kind of like very pale pinks and blues, and it's so slight, like that very pale difference is really entrancing to me, and that's something I'm studying being up there. Um, and kind of even in like the foliage, like the different layers of leaves and trying the layers. I think that's kind of the place where I can find transparency in my life other than, yeah, stained glass, which is
And so
really
what
nice.
is the, like, your preference, or what you're really interested in is fabric? And are there other connotations to, other than fabrics, transparency that interest you?
Uh,
They've thought about it.
wh-
Why do you like fabric?
Why do I like fabric? I don't know. It's like I think about this a lot because I'm like, oh yeah, these aren't going to last like maybe as long as an oil painting. So the question is there, like, why don't I just make, I love paint. Like, why don't I make paintings? Why am I making fabric paintings? But I really feel drawn to the tactility of fabric. Like when I'm in a gallery or museum or, you know, whatever, and I see something that's made with like rope and like wool, you know, that tactility is really attractive to me. I like and also silk is amazing because it is transparent and there's no binder and dye. So it's like pure color. Like the way the color comes through once you heat it up is just like, paint can't do that. I don't know. So that's that's the love of silk. Yeah. Yeah, Max.
I was really struck by the way that kind of in your latest works that involve like silhouettes and various levels of landscape, there's really like a depth of field kind of that seems pretty new in a lot of the
Mm.
history that I've seen, like almost like a cinema or a stage set. And I'm curious if that's like opening up, you know, ideas for you as part of your thought process, or just where that kind of grows from and sits with you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm picturing like the piece from CMCA with like the poppies and the backgrounds.
Mhm.
Yeah, that felt really fun. Like it felt really exciting to kind of create deeper space and um yeah, this newer one, this one it doesn't have that actually. It's much flatter and it's in a way going sort of backwards, but I don't know. I don't know. I do think it's exciting. I think, you know, exploring the landscape painting more like automatically brings in that depth of fields and then kind of wanting to collapse it with the pattern. I kind of want to go in both directions. But I did feel like the ones at CMCA were kind of like the most exciting in terms of, yeah, all the potential of space, even with the scale, like being able to have more vast areas of openness felt really good. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up because I feel like at the moment I'm kind of collapsing it again with like my, you know, breaking it all apart again, but I want to keep that openness as well. And I do think the landscape puts in a window or like an open space that kind of can be a way out for me from the like the shield of the stripes. You know, it's just like kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm wondering how those pieces come together. Are they meant to be shown together? Is that a curatorial choice to show these pieces and how they're laid out? Is that something that you have a say in, or does it the
Yeah.
curator who decided how?
Yeah, I really love that question because I actually made all these paintings for this show under a very short amount of time. It was like, I think I had 10 weeks to make all the work you see in there. That front one is someone else's sculpture. It's a 4 or 5 person show. So, um, but yeah, it was like really exciting to just kind of, and also nerve-wracking and not enough time. But I did make them to go together. The little landscapes were kind of hanging out already in my studio. They were winter landscapes. I think the show was, my due date was May 1st, deadline, May 1st, April. So it was proposed in March. So I had just completed, like, the paintings were completed of there's 4 actually small paintings, and they were just sitting with those borders in the studio for a long time. So they kind of fed everything else. Like they were like my pets or something. But I didn't sew them together until, for the show. So they were kind of hanging out and creating. I don't think you can see this, but there's like, let's see, let me just go back for a second. This painting here on the right with like that plant, it's like this really weird plant with spikes on the side that was on the wall, and it was kind of like this, like this, I don't know, they were keeping me company, they were giving me strength. And then I used that plant, oops, for throughout that painting on the left, the big painting. So it kind of like they did feed each other, which was really nice. And then the curatorial, it's really special. So this gallery is Ceysson and Benetier. It's 2 good friends who run the gallery, but the dad of the one friend is Bernard Ceysson, who's like a really amazing curator, and he's, elderly now. But he kind of started the gallery, and he like worked at Centre Pompidou, and he started first showing the support surface artists. So he's just like a really knowledgeable art historian and amazing. So he chooses where everything goes, and he's really good at it. He like just it like looks like, I wish you could see the whole show, because you walk in and just the way all the galleries have different artists, and then there are places where they're together, and just the color and the space that he creates is, I mean, he's so brilliant at his the way he composes work in the space is really, it's so exciting to work with him. So I'm very happy that you noticed his I don't know, his curatorial vision. Yeah. Yeah.
But you're mapping the landscape.
Yeah.
Hard for me not to see like some of the long. And in effect, the landscape is mapping on you.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I was just wondering how that, how are you conveying that identity? Like, does somebody want to say now it's Lauren in her main period? It's Lauren coming?
Yeah.
How is Lauren wanting to be represented? If I ask this because as a long time kind of Eastern myself, now I'm doing Southwest.
Okay.
There's a kind of identity.
Yeah.
That it's mapped on you.
Yeah.
I want that landscape to map on your mapping. You also much resist the idea that it's going to be the thing that becomes your identity.
Like regionalism, kind of like resist like your locality in a way, like that your identity is deeper than that. Yeah.
Because there is this,
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know, it's psychology, I don't know, the great, but then you become, there's a typical sort of that I do. I just wonder how.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I lived in New York for 19 years, and that was a long time. It was like, so it was a big shift from like Brooklyn to very rural Maine. It's a really big change. But I'm from New Hampshire and I lived in Pennsylvania for a while too, so I kind of feel like a country girl. Like I felt like I was just gonna be in New York for a couple years, and that didn't really happen. It just lasted forever. Um, I don't know. I like it. Like I like yeah, it's like it's Lauren, and then it's like from lives and works in Maine, in Lubec, Maine, specifically. Like it's often mentioned, and it's like I like that. Like I feel like it's kind of special. I don't know. It's the edge of America. It's the furthest eastern tip of the United States. I don't know. That feels really fun. I don't know. I feel like it is a huge part of my life, living out there and being isolated, and town of 1,300 people, it's pretty crazy. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't mind it. I feel like if I'm attached to that identity right now, kind of in a superficial or a linguistic way, like I'll take it because it is such a huge part of my life. It really is. It influences everything. And when I think about like, oh, like, I don't know, for a moment I pictured myself like I have friends who live in Brunswick, Maine, and there's like this big studio building. They have studios in there and like the city. And I was like, no, I would be so depressed, like to be back in like the confines of like a town or a city, like, and not be able to just walk and be alone in nature. Um, it's kind of like, yeah, I feel like that's kind of what my whole life is about in a way. It's like being out there in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll change my mind in a couple of years about that identity. One like how I feel about being attached to that identity. But for now, I'm like, yeah, I am. Like, yeah, yeah,
I've just been thinking so much about the fragility of the material
yeah.
and the raw edges and things
Mm-hmm.
that would collect dust.
Mm-hmm.
And the material would sag in a certain way and you presented all this work in gallery so that implies some sort of like market dimension.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as I've been in my head, like literally trying to think, well, what other materials could she use? When I think about, the silk of the silk screen that's
Mhm.
rich.
Right.
But, it's sort of adamantly what it is. And so I wonder, we don't usually think about paintings as having a lifespan,
Right.
but it seems as though your work does. And I just wonder if you've thought of the paintings in that way, that instead of being able to be conserved, they resist that kind of longevity.
Hmm.
So is that something that
It's
comes
interesting.
into play?
Oh, yeah,
Like
that's on
the
my
show
mind.
just happened, pulling it out of the studio. Does the painting age? Does it deteriorate? Does it have a lifespan? Or is that part of a kind of dynamic property that the painting incorporates? I mean,
Yeah.
you said it's like a body that.
Right.
ages.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like things that age. I like to see the painting get a little faded and a little bit kind of, yeah, like sagging but I actually haven't seen it happen yet because I haven't been working with silk that long. But even the ones I have that have been hanging in my studio for like 4.5 years, let's say, like I have no signs of damage of any kind. So that's nice, it's not fast. I think they have 100 years at least, and that's a long time. I can live with that.
Well, Chris and I were talking to students about how work could lead to other work.
Yeah.
And really interested in how instinctual you are in terms of responding to work
Yeah.
and maybe having a counter gesture sometimes, or like diving in deep to a certain part of it. And I'm just curious how you developed that kind of instinct and being surprised when you're making swipes and so what would you say to students about sort of following a certain work and that leading to other moves or tendencies or counter?
Yeah. Yeah. We were talking about this earlier and kind of about like this idea of desire and just being like noticing when you feel that spark of desire. Like, oh, I want to see this bigger, or I want to see like more of this color, more of this pattern. Um, I feel like lately I don't have long studios days right now because of, school being out. Um, so I'm not going that fast or far in the studio, but I'm really noticing like my pacing is just really just following hunches and just taking little steps at a time and kind of doing what feels kind of enjoyable. I don't know. It doesn't all feel enjoyable. Like it's a lot of labor too. Um, I think it's really nice that in the world of painting, you can do what you want and you can make the world you want. I think in real life that can be harder. You know, it's like you can take these risks in your painting and really just take leaps. And I don't know, that feels really liberating to me. And I feel like it teaches me how to live my life in a way. It's like, okay, this can be a model for how to engage with all the decisions. I don't know. I feel really close to myself in the studio and just what I don't feel like I'm always making good stuff. Like a lot of the stuff looks terrible, but it's like you just keep going and you just keep trying and I don't know. Yeah. I think partly like I had like, you know, in like my early work that I showed, like a lot of it's like really crappy and ugly and just like, you know, just sort of that was sort of my entry into making like my own work, like even in college, just like tearing it all apart. Like I feel like I didn't really have ideas of like tradition was not something I was interested in or like following rules. So I kind of just developed my own sensibility. And I think that's why I actually find landscape painting liberating now, because like during those days, I was not interested at all in looking at the landscape or anything that felt traditional, felt confining to me. Um, I don't know. I don't know if that's where the sensibility comes from. I'm not sure, but I feel like that's kind of like I think my beginnings were more like a little wild or something. No. Yeah, yeah.
I appreciate your intuitive kind of sense of urgency that you see in a lot of the work.
Thank you.
And in the current work that you have up, really curious about how much in your intuition or a very kind of assertive move away from these decorative borders came about, because the larger pieces you see it kind of start to dissolve.
Hmm.
So I'm really curious, was that more intuitive part of the process, or you just wanted to go in a different direction?
Yeah, so the borders are like actually made just to, they're like decorative, but they're made actually just to stretch around the frame. So the small ones, it just was exciting. It looked great on the front. It was fun. And so I was like, okay, I have to add more borders so that I can wrap it around the frame. So it's kind of almost like the opposite. And the big ones, I was wondering if that would happen as well, but they didn't look good. I don't know. Like these just wanted to, the image wanted to engulf the whole thing and not be confined by the border felt confining in them. And also it's one painting, the three pieces. So you don't want to have, I mean, I could have had them around the outer, but yeah. Yeah. Did that answer the question? Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
Maybe it's more of a statement, but I get the strong sense of like an excavation going on. They're doing and it's such a light material, so
Yeah.
but like one like wallpaper painting.
Mm.
Back and the surprise.
Oh, that's nice.
Who's been here before, and this is wallpaper and floral, and it's a different century.
Mm.
And then almost, I love it behind you, almost like an excavation of artists too.
Mm-hmm.
Like a Peter Max back to Matisse
Mm-hmm.
kind of sensation there. And I was just wondering if excavation or is part of your work, or an excavation of your own work.
Yeah, yeah, I'm feeling that right now for sure. I don't know, that was just really nice to hear you describe that because I remember that was very strong interest in mine as like a child, like going into abandoned houses and seeing peeling wallpaper. Like I didn't know what to do with my love for that. Like it was so like very powerful. And I haven't really thought about that for a long time. But yeah, definitely. And even like going to, you know, like Pompeii and Naples and seeing like, you know, all of the mosaics and the layers sometimes and, you know, tiles. Yeah, I really love that. Those are things I love to see in the world, like, and things broken down by time. like the mosaics broken down by time, like not being perfect and being fragmented, and yeah, having these different worlds kind of overlap and layer for sure, definitely. And the excavation I feel like is more internal, of just like this sort of I think, I don't know how other people feel, but painting for me is very like deep and personal, and just going into my stories, and then using my son as my, image, like going into ideas of him as me, because I'm the one painting it. Like, how much is it me really? Sometimes there's some where he has a ponytail, and I'm like, it kind of looks like a girl, so then it more could be me. I don't know. There's just, yeah, there's a lot of like inner excavation, I think, when I'm painting, and then also sort of kind of going back to like the intuitive question of just like how, sitting and waiting for a long time before making big moves. And then also one thing that I should mention is that um, these paintings are a little bit like easier than the singular silk paintings, because if I don't like something, I can cut it, and I can, replace it with a new piece of silk and fix it, and start over, which has really been liberating in this series. It's kind of new. Yeah.
Thank you, Lauren.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.